Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Talks with Chug. Each week, we cover pressing topics that matter to you and your business. My name is Arianna Gonzalez from Chug Attorneys and CPAs, tuning in from our San Diego office. Please join me in welcoming attorney Maureen Scorese from our New Jersey office. Hi there, Maureen, and welcome.
Hi, Arianna. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time. For today's topic, we will be talking all about the litigation process and our top tips for going through this process. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. I'd like to remind you that this conversation is for informational purposes only. It does not create an attorney-client relationship. So if you have any questions, please comment them below or email us anytime at info@chug.com. So let's get right into it. Maureen, can you tell us what are the initial steps one should take when they find themselves involved in a litigation case?
Typically, it's important, first of all, to get legal counsel, to understand the lay of the land. It's a specialized field, and most people don't understand the deadlines and requirements. So you want to get legal counsel. You want to maintain any type of documents or files related to your understanding of of the legal papers. Largely, and your attorney will tell you this at the outset, but it would be used against you if you tried to go and destroy evidence related to a case.
Wow, really good to know. Great things to keep in mind. So, how can businesses effectively prepare for the possibility of litigation? What should they do beforehand?
So we can't be overly paranoid about, oh, is this going to cause a lawsuit, right? But just normal, good business practices are what we would recommend. Initially, just to be in compliance with laws as far as operating businesses, and understanding what laws apply to your business. There are different sets of laws that apply in different fields, like finance versus selling widgets online. So those are just some general areas. You'd also, to the extent that you have agreements with other people, try to keep those in writing, so that you know expectations and it's not just all verbal. Oftentimes, when you don't have a clear record, whether in writing to understand each side's requirements in running the business or with business partners, that can result in problems as well.
Yeah, that's really important. Set expectations and have them in writing. So I know you've done this for a while and we help people with this all the time. So what are some common mistakes you've seen companies make during the service of legal documents that could be avoided?
So there's a large gamut here. Oftentimes, legal documents might be served, and the person receiving them doesn't understand what they mean, and whether they're spam mail. We get so much spam mail and circulars that oftentimes are presented in a way to appear to be a legal document when in fact they're not. So I think that um, it's best to have an attorney that you can reach out to when you're running a business and just say, hey, does this look like something I need to respond to? So that's one big mistake in not understanding a document and ignoring it in that way. Or believing, the other mistake that I see sometimes is people believing that they can save money by handling a dispute on their own, when in fact that often makes more problems without having the proper legal advice.
Those are great points. Yeah, stay proactive, get insight from an attorney, and, definitely have somebody you trust that you can work with. So, can you explain the role of a registered agent and why it's crucial for a business?
So, in states where you operate, you need a registered agent by the state laws so that people can serve legal documents or the company can receive legal notices, whether it's from state agencies, the federal government, or just other people that might want to reach out to the company either with a legal claim or otherwise. And so it's really important to have a set address within the state for business purposes. And that's why oftentimes you use a registered agent to do that.
Wow, really good to know. So, how do annual reports contribute to minimizing legal risks for businesses?
So the annual reports are important to maintain your legal status. So as far as compliance issues, you need to do it. Otherwise, you will have some fines or penalties, and that creates legal risks. Oftentimes, it's that's really the essence of it as far as the annual reports. Just
So, are there any consequences for failing to respond properly to a legal document service? If so, what do those consequences look like? Do we have any insight on that?
Sure, of course. So if it's a legal document for a law, such as for a lawsuit, you can get a judgment entered against you by failing to respond. And so that will result in fines, penalties, and more. It ends up being more costly if you then, after the default judgment's entered against your company, it costs more for you to then try to remove the default judgment and have your day in court. And so it's always best when you first get a legal document to put the dedicated resources to it that it needs.
So definitely get an attorney if you receive a document like this and you're not sure what to do with it. We'd be happy to advise you. So you mentioned a registered agent is required for a business to operate in good standing. So how often should businesses review and update their contact information with their registered agent?
So if you have a third party registered agent, they do ordinarily bill you annually for that fee, for that service that they provide to you. So you do need to pay the fee and update your information with them on an annual basis at the least for all registered agents that I've worked with. If you change your contact information in between that annual updating, then you should also update your contact information if you were to change your address or telephone information or email, because it's vital to have that connection with the registered agent and your business operations so that you do receive documents in a timely manner.
Understood. So make sure they have the most recent contact information. So you mentioned a lot of times business owners or employees can think that they can handle the legal documents on their own, and then, that leads to a bunch of issues that we then, help them through. So in what ways can improper handling of these legal documents impact a business's legal standing? Does it impact it at all? What should we keep in mind here?
So this specifically can go towards your good standing or not in good standing status at the Secretary of State for the state where you're operating, where you're and it can sometimes you're registered in several states depending on the level of business that you do within a state. And so if you do not file the annual report, then usually after 2 or 3 years, if there hasn't been an annual report filed for your business, then the state itself will administratively dissolve your company, meaning that it no longer is registered with the state. And at that point, you would have to pay more fines and fees to reinstate your business. And oftentimes, if you're not registered, then you'll have a harder time enforcing any rights in that state as well. So these things do impact your company in ways that not everyone can appreciate until you actually need to enforce a contract or you have a business dispute. So it is always best to maintain your standing
Absolutely.
and do those annual report filings.
Yeah, really good reminder there. So, what are some strategies for businesses to stay organized and compliant with the legal document requirements?
So you should have someone dedicated that to these responsibilities. There should be a role that personnel at the company whose job it falls under to maintain these annual compliances, and that could be an admin assistant who's been informed on what's necessary, or it can be a manager or an
Great.
outside law firm as well. I should say
Oh,
we often
yeah.
help as well for people who don't have the internal staff with the knowledge. It's often easier to have your attorneys handle it. So,
Yeah, I was going to suggest that as well. We do those services as well if anybody is watching this and does want somebody that they can reach out to from time to time with assistance for this. So, what are the critical deadlines associated with litigation and legal document handling that businesses should never miss?
So if you are served with a lawsuit, any document, it will come with the cover sheet called a summons that sets forth a deadline on it. So anytime you get any type of legal document and you don't understand it, if there is a deadline, it's often put on the first page to make that person aware that it's a legal document, that there's a requirement to respond. And so just reading the document itself is essential. And the other thing, there's a ton of deadlines in any litigation that are governed by the local rules of the court, by the rules of civil procedure or evidence, as well as by the judges. The judges often have their rules for how to conduct litigation matters in front of them. And so there's a lot of interplay of different rules and requirements that is one reason why we always tell our clients it's always better to have legal counsel. To help you navigate those rules and deadlines.
Absolutely. Do you have any recommendations for how technology can be leveraged to manage legal documents and compliance more effectively?
So for compliance purposes, yes, we use technology all the time for monitoring annual deadlines. It's really easy for anyone to be able to add those annual deadlines to your calendar so that you have reminders a few months or throughout the year, right? If it's a periodic reminder, but we never use just the deadline as the reminder. We always have multiple reminders prior to the deadline so that you can meet that deadline beforehand rather than waiting to the last minute. So technology is really useful for managing the legal documents as well and just maintaining them in an electronic file. It used to be that we had filing cabinets full of papers. And so these days, if you have a consistent system for how to manage your electronic files as well as your deadlines to be managed with technology, it can be a real time saver and space saver.
Really good insights on that. So, how does effective management of these legal documents protect a company in the event of an unforeseen litigation?
It, well, first of all, any organization helps, right? We can all be more efficient when we're organized. And so if you have a company that has contracts and they don't maintain them in a file, then if there's a dispute about how the parties are performing under the contract, you're going to be out of luck or have a really hard time figuring out what your rights are if you can't find the contract. And so we need it's really important to have a good operating system in place for your business, for contracts, for changes to contracts, if it's by email, if it's in writing, and any other type of relationship in your business, whether it's just for selling things or services. It's really important to have the management of the business operations efficient and clean to protect you in the event that there is a litigation. You then have a clean record. You're not looking through 3 different emails, but you have an organized system already in place, and it makes everything much better when there's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep things organized. So, what specific aspects of the litigation process are most misunderstood by businesses?
So I think businesses often come with a common sense experience of years, oftentimes with their business. And if there's a dispute, it's never that easy in court because they don't understand the rules of evidence, and the rules of civil procedure. And so oftentimes the expenses start to add up and they don't always understand that. But there's once a lawsuit is filed, the lawyers and the parties, meaning your business and the person on the other side, have to follow the procedures of the court. And a lot of times businesses who have never been in court just don't understand that requirement. And they often say, oh, well, we can save money, so we don't want you to do that, right? They don't want you, they might say, oh, that engaging in exchange of information, which is what we call discovery, sounds really expensive, so we don't want you to do that, or we want you to do the bare minimum. But if the converse to that is that if you don't conduct discovery and ask for all the information related to the case, you can't prepare a defense or you can't prepare and support your claim. And you're more likely to end up less prepared for the trial if you end up going there.
Yeah, that's very true. Glad you brought that up and, emphasize the importance of the discovery process a lot of times. So, what are your recommendations for how businesses can ensure that they're proactive rather than reactive when it comes to legal compliance?
So a couple of things they can do is, as mentioned previously, use technology for monitoring those things that they know they need to do all the time. Just like taxes, everyone knows they have to file taxes. You would include reminders for annual requirements. If you have licenses, the annual reports, those annual requirements are really important. And then the other way to maintain legal compliance would be to run audits periodically, whether it's for your business operations, have somebody come in with fresh eyes and make sure that you're running things effectively. In a similar way, that person could also, you could have a lawyer come in and say, hey, are we compliant with all of our I-9s, right? That's a big area of compliance as well for employees. Are our employment contracts compliant with the laws where all our employees reside? Things like that. It would be good to periodically have an audit done for different areas as well.
Yeah, great advice. What training or resources are typically recommended for staff to properly handle service of legal documents?
So this will depend on how large your business is. If you have a smaller business, I wouldn't expect the staff to have much training other than to be able to recognize this is a legal document and we need to reach out to our outside counsel. Um, or this is a legal document that means we have a deadline in 6 months to submit this compliance requirement to this state agency. But if it's a larger company, you can have um, paralegals who are trained to recognize legal documents and other internal general counsel. And so the training for that staff would be typical for whatever they're handling. There are periodic webinars for obviously the attorneys all have to do continuing legal education. So that is something that they handle as on their own for their license. And for paralegals, similarly, you would have them attend periodic webinars for staying up to date on the laws that affect your business.
Great advice. I have one more question for you. What steps should a business take immediately after receiving a default judgment due to missed legal documentation?
So that would require an attorney. After receiving a default judgment and being shown an order where there's a judgment against you for money, you need an attorney to help you navigate that situation. I've been pulled in at that stage and helped people have a chance to their day in court to have the dispute heard rather than just accept that default judgment. So absolutely, you want an attorney in that case. If I could, Ariana, I'd also like to go back to the previous question as far as
Please.
training and resources. There's also a lot of in-person conferences that go on in any and all specific areas of law and business. And so another way to stay up to date is to attend those trade shows or legal meetings that would be in person. So that's another great way, not just to network, but to also stay up to date on what's going on in your industry as well.
Yeah, those conferences are great to see what's going on, the new trends, what technology people are using. So lots of great insights there. And as you mentioned, networking is always fun and a great experience. Well, thank you so much for your time, Maureen. I really appreciate your insights and you walking us through this process and, giving us the top tips for business owners to keep in mind in case they are going through this process. So that is all we have time for today. So this brings us to the end of our conversation. To stay up to date, please subscribe and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you have any questions or suggestions, email us anytime at info@chug.com and make sure to join us back here next week for more pressing topics that truly matter to you and your business. Until next time, stay safe and take care. Thank you again for joining us, everyone. Thank you so much, Maureen. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it.